Well, howdy, all you collector car fans out there. This is Jason, the owner and founder of Southern Bush Motorsports, here with another Tall Tale. This one's a tall tale, but it's also a question and answer session. So I'm calling this one, would you save it or not to save it? This right here was a 69, I think it was, GTX convertible. The guy that owned this car, he had that car in high school. He covered it for years and just kind of got tired of covering it. And he just let it sit, and as you can see, it just sat and rot. So we're going to go over these pictures together and see, would you save this? Now, let's keep in mind, talking about 60 grand worth of parts and labor to do it. It was a numbers matching car, completely untouched, and but it was rough. It was definitely rough. I mean, I think that was a North Carolina car. It got rained on, snowed on, everything. But you also have to keep in mind that they only made so many of these cars. So where's the line? Where's the line where you say, no, that can't be saved, or no, it's going to cost too much money to even bother trying to save the darn thing? I'll give you my answer, what I think at the end of it. But to me, knowing in the back of my mind that they only made so many of these cars, and they definitely didn't make a lot of these GTX convertibles, I don't know. Tough call, but let's wait until we see some of the interior pictures. This wasn't a super highly optioned convertible GTX, but it's what can be said. They only made so many of them. That was a Cornet that was sitting out there. The car was pretty straight, pretty solid. I was surprised it was actually just sitting out in the open like that. But here's that GTX. You can tell the wheel wells are all rotted out. Obviously in the inner and outer quarters. You're talking about a lot of money right there. Whole car's obviously going to have to come apart. When you see rust spots like that, a lot of people don't know this, but when they were making metal for these cars or buying metal for these cars, they used to throw the whole car in the smelting pot. So they didn't take the tires off or the interior out or anything. They threw the whole thing in and they just scagged it off and scraped the crap off from the top. But you're still going to get little pieces of rubber and all that stuff inside the metal when they remake fenders and doors and stuff for these cars. So that's why you get those spots in the middle of a car, and you wonder how the whole car is solid, but there's a spot of rust right through in the middle of a door. Well, that's why. If you look at that convertible, look at that convertible interior. I mean, he never touched the car. There wasn't anything done to it. Just let it sit and rot. Wasn't a Hemi car, wasn't a 4-speed car or anything fancy like that, but you can see the car is completely untouched. He just let the thing sit and rot, and it was just so sad to see it, but he had a building full of other cars, and wasn't on his priority list. But the cool thing was the car was complete. We start looking at the interior pictures here. That's where all the problems really start. For me, so when you're buying a car like this is an unrestored car, but you shouldn't be paying unrestored high prices for it, because this car obviously needs to come apart. It's got some major issues. But it was a pretty low mileage car. I think it had less than 50,000 miles on it, if I remember right. I can't see that odometer correctly. Smaller picture that I see. Rainbow steering wheel. It was just, the car is what it was. The top part of the car was pretty solid. If I remember right, it was a 383 car. But, find a restoration shop. You're going to lose a car for 2 to 3 years if you got a good restoration shop. It's going to be a mind-blowing trip trying to find parts for this car that are any good. There's the original numbers matching motor sitting in the car. Looks like at one time he was trying to pull it out. But, untouched. It makes it easier when you're restoring a car when it's untouched. Because you know where stuff was, where everything was, and it's easier to pull stuff out so you can categorize it and box it up. Wasn't an air grabber car. Under hood of that car, look at how solid that hood is, right? You got a lot of good parts on the car, but when you start getting into frame rails and floor pans, who cares? Quarters, who cares? They repop all that stuff. But frame rails, it's like, when you acid dip that car, which a car like this you really should acid dip, how much of the car is actually going to be left when you get it out of that tank? Is there not going to be anything left? I mean, you can't rebody a car like this because there's numbers all over the place, and it's not right, it's not legal. But Yeah, I think that chain was on there because he kept the hood The hood was flopping around and stuff at one point, and it's time sitting out in the field. Look at that frame rail. Just sad. Because it leaked through the trunk. The frame rail rotted from the top down. So you got frame rails that are rotted out. That side wasn't rotted. That side was pretty solid. So this is why I did this Tales from the Bush. Because one, it's some pretty cool cars. And two, it's how do you make that decision where a car is worth saving or it's just too far gone? Because, this car's worth a lot of money done. There was a 442 that I found on the property. Now, 442s are my favorite cars because it was the first car I ever owned. 69 442. I was young, getting into a lot of trouble. My dad brought my brother a 69 442 bar find. He cracked it up on graduation. My dad gave it to me, gave me a place to keep it for a year, and said, learn something about mechanics like your uncle. And so I restored the car. Did a crappy job, but I did it. This 442 was, aside from the motor being out of it, the car had never been touched. Lord only knows why the motor was taken out of it, but so now we get into it. Do you restore this car? Car's untouched, pretty rare, good color combination. I think it was black on black with a white stripe, if I remember right. But again, except for the motor, untouched. But the car was rough. It was kind of solid. It looked pretty straight. There you go, sitting right there, just sitting in the field. It was just ridiculous how these guys just. It is what it is. You do what you have to do. But the chrome was actually pretty good on the car. Really super straight car, not rotted around that back windshield. But that's the decisions you have to make when you're restoring a car. If a car's pretty solid when you get started, you're going to save some money on some body work. If the car's got a rough body on it, it's going to cost you a lot more. You can add about 30% onto the cost if a lot of body work needs to be done. Now this right here was a 70 446 pack Go Mango Super B. This is a good example of when do you say no, the car can't be restored. Because the car was stripped for some reason. It was found at a junkyard. But the craziest thing is, for some godforsaken reason, the numbers matching block was sitting in the trunk, just the block, and the numbers matching transmission was still in it with the numbers matching rear end. But I'm not going to lie to you, when you look at these pictures, this car was rough. This is borderline, do you save it? So then you get into the situation where do you just find a 70 Coronet, that 6-cylinder car that's super solid, and close the door and swap body part numbers? That would be a lot easier to do it that way. It's illegal, and it's lying to people, and you're ripping off people. Even if you plan on keeping it, something happens to you. The car's going to move on in life, and other people are going to get ripped off. But it was so hard to deal with this car because there were so many spots that were good, so many spots that were rough. There was really, some frame rail pieces. It's like, God, do I really fix this car? I took the pictures of this car. I found this car. I documented this car. Even with how rough this car is, and even though that I had a 70 Coronet 318 car, which is super solid body sitting right beside it, personally, I'm saving the car. Because they don't make any of these. And the Go Mango color was a great color. The white Super B stripe was a great combination. I believe it had the white interior. If I remember right, it had a white interior. And personally, I'm saving it. You can see the floor pans were rotted out. It looks rough, but the structure of the car was still okay. It is going to be a lot of work. There's no question about it. But when it's all said and done, that would be a killer car. Look at that roof, was a little rough on it too. Actually, it looks like it was a vinyl top car, white vinyl top car. But a lot of the work had been done. The rotted sheet metal had been taken out of it. It looked like it was about ready to start body work and sheet panel replacement. That spot right there, that is a tough one to fix. That's a whole quarter. Just because that spot, so even if the rest of the quarter panel is good, you're replacing that whole quarter panel. Now, that was the 318 Coronet body, and you can tell that is super solid. That saves a lot of problems, but you gotta illegally look at those quarters. Perfect, straight. But you gotta do what you're not supposed to do. Cut body panel numbers off the cool car and put them on and make the 318 car part of it all. There was all kinds of parts and stuff he had tried to restore the car. He had kept everything. Stuff he had taken off the car, he saved over the years. He really was trying to restore the car, but you can just get over your head sometimes. A little bit too much for people to restore some of these cars. He was smart enough to bag everything and labeled everything, and he had all the good intentions of restoring the car, but it can just get away from you and get a little overwhelming. These professional restoration shops, it's nothing to them. They can take anybody's half taken apart project and make sense of it and start it all over, because these restoration shops, these guys are professionals. They don't look at the cars, the crap that you brought to them with everything in boxes and stuff. They just know what the car is supposed to look like at the end. So for me, yeah, I would save this car. It was a beautiful car, great colors, and it was really cool to actually find this one. I appreciate you coming by to check on another Tales from the Bush, and we're looking forward to doing some more tales for you. And don't forget to like and subscribe our page, and we appreciate all the views and all the people coming by. Thank you for visiting Tales from the Bush.